Hey guys, this month I'm bringing you episodes of Taboo Talk, a podcast that Pastor Mike and I do once a month, diving into topics that Christians don't always dive into. This month we're going to be talking about marriage. Specifically, how can you make your marriage better? What are some of the things that are going to sabotage your marriage? What works? What should you avoid? How can you get beyond the crazy cycle? There's a lot of great wisdom in this episode, and I hope that you find it beneficial and that you even share it with a friend who might need to know the same information. Enjoy.
Well, hey, what's up, everyone? It's me, Pastor Mike. I'm here with Amber L.B. Swenson, and we're back to talk about some taboo topics. So you probably know by this point, kind of our little niche in the kingdom of God is to tackle some of the most difficult issues of our day with an open Bible, hopefully like Jesus, full of grace and truth. And today, Amber, we get to talk about C- marriages.
Yeah,
that's an exciting... Actually, I'm kind of stealing this idea. I read about a woman years ago who was a Christian author who wrote a book that was called like Marriage Rescue or Helping Your Marriage, and it like totally fell flat. And then they retitled it to D- marriages, and the sales just went through the roof.
really?
Yeah, that people could relate so much with that idea of we're still together, but it is far from what we want it to be.
Yeah.
So I'd like to kind of dig in with you and just kind of figure out, I don't think when you or I stood at the altar or any Christian stands at the altar and the emotions are flowing and you're holding hands and taking the vow, like everyone obviously wants a great marriage, but a lot of people end up with B+ marriages or C- marriages or barely passing marriages. So I really kind of want to explore with you, like, how does a couple get there? How does a Christian couple end up there? And then if someone's listening today or watching today and they are there, how do they get out of there?
Yeah.
What's like the healing, rescue, repair method? It's not easy, but I kind of want to dig in and tackle that taboo topic. So if marriage isn't the dream you imagine it would be, what do you do? So maybe let's start with that first thing. As you're thinking about people you know, your own experiences, relationships that you've seen, how does a Christian couple, how do two people who love Jesus end up with a less than amazing marriage?
You think it has to do, and I'm asking you too, expectations and priorities. Do you think those are two of the kind of things that can waylay you if you get them mixed up? Yeah. So if I expect certain things from my spouse and they don't live up to that,
sure, now
I'm disappointed, right? And priorities too, and it can happen in so many ways. You hear of the general, the guy who works too much, and doesn't pay attention to his wife. And then you hear of the wives who are like totally into their kids but neglect their husbands. Yeah. So when your priorities are misplaced and they're not lining up, then he's unhappy or she's unhappy.
Yes.
So for me, expectations and priorities are pretty big.
Yep.
On the, like, it can either go really well or we can at least float, or it can be really bad.
This is funny because I was just thinking about this conversation before we started, and literally those two words.
No way. Seriously?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the unspoken expectation. It's not like two people sat down and said, here's how much we're going to spend. Here's how often we're going to date every month. Here's how many hours we're investing in us versus the kids versus work. It's just all of us kind of bring the quote unquote right amount of those things. How often are we going to be intimate? And then you're just working off of all these unspoken assumptions where one person, I feel like I'm being a good spouse. I feel like I'm here for you. And you're thinking, you're never here for me. So yeah, putting that on, I don't want it to be like too cold and clinical, but I've actually advised that to couples, like put it on paper, what you think, like this would be a really good marriage for us that we both can agree on. And then it becomes almost like a third party that holds both people accountable. Like if Kim is doing these things, I can't get mad because this is what we agreed to. And if she doesn't do that +4, well, what can I say? So yeah, I think sitting down, having mutually agreed upon expectations and then prioritizing your life so you can reach that is a huge, huge thing.
And then recognizing that it's not always going to be. I mean, there are always times, there are seasons that you just got to throw the paper away.
Sure.
Because right now I think every marriage goes through survival, seasons where you're just like, okay, you either got the really cranky newborn or you've got aging parents or you've got the teenager who's going astray and they're as much as you have prioritized your spouse, at this point, this child needs all your attention from both of you. And right now the marriage is on hold a little bit. But if you've already been investing in your marriage, you can go through those seasons and you can maintain.
Yep.
As long as we'll get back to it.
Yep.
But if you haven't invested in your marriage, then you're kind of already dry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm thinking about like a school grade. If you were kind of at a B+ and you have a season that dips you 10 points, you're still an average marriage. But if you've been at a 75%,
right,
and then that hits, then it's when it feels like, I don't know if I can do this much longer.
Mm-hmm.
Personal question.
Yeah.
If you're comparing as you're thinking back on your own marriage, like the best chapter you've enjoyed and the hardest one you've been through, what do you think was different about your habits or your husband's habits between, the D- stage versus the strong A+ stage?
Well, I think one of the things that has caused the best turn for our marriage from my perspective, if Steve was sitting here, he'd probably answer totally differently because he would probably tell you what I had changed, which had made it much better for him.
Okay.
But one of the things that made a huge, remarkable difference for me is many, many, many years ago, I told Steve, I know you're listening, but you're not hearing me.
Mm.
Like, I understand that you're looking at me right now.
Sure.
And so you could repeat back the words.
Yeah.
But I know that you're not hearing me because I've had this conversation with you 4 times and we're still in the same place.
The same fight. On
repeat.
So
So I know that you're not understanding what I'm saying. So either I have to use different words and really help you, or you need to tell me what about this you're not understanding. And I hear that so much from women. Like, my husband doesn't listen to me. And then it gets to be a naggy. Like, you're nagging because you're saying, no, I need help between 6 and 8. Like, when the kids are all need food and sports and whatever, like, you can say at the end of the day, yeah, that looked really hard. No.
I wasn't looking for.
You don't understand. When I'm saying between 6 and 8, I'm drowning. I know you heard that, but you're not comprehending what I'm saying. Because, so if I need to rephrase it.
Blessed is the man who hears the words of his wife and obeys them.
Or blessed is the man who hears them and interprets them. Like, okay, I was saying I was drowning, and I say that every night. But what I mean is, I need you to help.
Oh.
I might not be saying it. I might just be saying, but
okay, let's talk about that though. Because most guys.
That's the point.
We can't navigate the nuance and the hints. So what you just said, agree. I'm just trying to think, if I'm Steve, like, I know I didn't say it, but what you should understand is,
right.
Do you think that's a gender difference where
yes.
a woman knows what she's feeling and she feels like she's saying it?
Yes.
But guys are just blunt and direct.
Absolutely.
And I need you to say, make dinner 2 times a week.
Yeah. So, yes, I think so many women do what I just said. I'm drowning. That's what we say to our spouse.
Sure.
And we assume, our assumption is, if you hear that I'm drowning, you clearly are going to want to take something off my plate to help me. Because that's what we do for each other.
Sure.
So if I hear one of my friends say, I'm drowning, I'm like, well, what can I do? Or how can we alleviate this? Yeah. But when your husband hears it, he doesn't necessarily hear, oh, you want me to do the dishes.
He heard emotion, not action.
Yes. And so we're not always as accurate with our words as we could be.
Interesting.
And we need to understand that a man cannot read our mind or our intentions.
Yes.
We need to absolutely spell it out.
Wow.
A to B to C to D.
This is good. I like that. I've never thought about it that way, but that's super helpful. That you're trying to communicate and you want to love each other, but what's the number one flaw of communication is the assumption that it actually happened. So I can see that being maybe a bit of a stereotype, but a woman thinking she's communicating action, but she's really communicating emotion.
Absolutely.
And a man who didn't hear do A, and so he thought, I don't have to do anything.
Right.
When the emotion should lead him to say, how can I help?
Right.
Or what if I do this?
Right.
That's interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that a lot of women feel unheard by their husbands, and I don't think it's because their husbands don't want to listen.
Sure.
I think it's probably a lack of our accurate communication.
Yeah.
And what does that mean from the man,
Sure. Yeah, there's that old Lutheran question, what does this mean? And I feel like we should ask that more as we're communicating with each other. Wow.
It would probably save a lot of fights.
Yeah. I'd encourage people who are listening, whenever I think we talk about husbands and wives, it's easy to maybe use what you and I say as a defense mechanism instead of, this is the point where you got to be humble, where if you're a man listening, you shouldn't listen to this part of the podcast and say, well, see, she should communicate more clearly with me.
Right.
You should be hearing, no, this is your chance to be humble and serve and ask those questions when you hear an emotion. So maybe emotion is like that first domino when she's happy or frustrated, like dig into that and get to that point where you can ask her a direct question. Like, so I hear you saying that, are you saying that you want me to do A?
Mm-hmm.
And I bet she'll tell you if she wants A or if she wants.
Or even say, what can I do? Okay, I'm hearing you, but what can I do? And it's also a time for women to be humble and to finally maybe admit, wait, I'm just complaining. I'm not asking him to do anything.
Sure.
So why did I expect him? That goes back to expectations.
Sure, yeah.
If I complain, I expect you to do something different.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Did you ask me to do something different? Did you spell it out? Did you?
Wow.
How can we communicate so that we can be truthful and honest with our expectations?
Yeah. And this is so, wow, I'm so glad we're having this conversation because there's the whole other thing that men are taught where don't be Mr. Fix-It.
Right.
Let her feel her feelings without saying, well, here's solution 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really nuanced where it's like, okay, am I just supposed to listen and say that sounds hard? Am I supposed to follow up and figure out what to do?
Ask the question. What would you like me to do?
That's good.
And if she says, nothing, I'm just telling you.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
But honey, it seems like you've told me 4 or 5 times now that you're really busy in between these hours. Is there something I can do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, actually there is. If on these days you had supper ready, that would be, that's as easy as it gets.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we talked about communication. Let me ask you a direct question.
Yeah.
When you see friends' marriages who are struggling, is the stereotype true that women often choose to put their children before their husband because that's actually easier for them? You know what I'm saying by that? I was saying when you're the authority over your kids, I think it's easier to invest in that relationship because you have more control. When I think when you're equals in a marriage, there's more give and take to that. Mm-hmm. And I think the same is true with a lot of guys in work. It's a stereotype too.
Yeah.
But when I go to work, I don't know. I don't think there's as much submission, not getting my way.
Right.
I can pursue my path and what I want. And I wonder if at the heart of that kids' work tension, where both husband or wife might feel neglected, is actually a resistance to doing the harder thing, which is to humble myself with my equal in marriage and put them first and show them love.
That's an interesting thought. I think for me, the seasons that I was putting the kids more before Steve, I wasn't trying to. I was just like, we have 4 kids and who's going to do it if I don't? Like, truthfully.
We're going to end up with 3 unless I step up and do this.
And honestly, and we were a family that we were crazy about not putting too much on the plate. Like you choose one sport. We're not doing sports year round.
Sure.
Like you can choose one season and one musical instrument. That's it, because I'm one person. Yeah. And Steve's schedule did not, being a nurse and having all different, he wasn't always dependable as far as rides and stuff. So it was me. And so I was very like, we're not going to fill up our plates. We're not going to, but still, there were certain years, school years, when no one was driving, that it was just, this is life.
Yeah, sure.
This is life. And Steve really was the type of parent who was like, I get it. Like this is a busy basketball season because 3 of our kids chose to do basketball and they're on 3 different teams. Yeah. And so he was like, I get it, Amber. I know. And again, that comes back to that season, right?
Yeah, that's good.
So we knew that it wasn't going to last forever. But so for me, I wasn't trying to neglect Steve necessarily, or even it was just we have 4 kids and this is where we're at. And I don't know how else to do it.
Sure.
And even doing, we did the carpool, so I wasn't going every.
Yeah.
But it was just, there's just so much,
Yeah, that's true. Do you think that was where we started with mutual expectations? I can understand when you're in a season where both of you decide, okay, I wish I could take you on a date every week. It's just too wild right now. But what's reasonable for this stage of life versus a one-sided decision where I've committed the kids to A, B, and C, and you feel neglected, but I've made that choice for us.
Mhm.
I heard
Yeah.
you use the plural, like we, a lot, which sounded really healthy to me.
That and the fact that, too, I don't think you can use... I still think even in the busy seasons, you can find ways to not neglect your spouse.
Hmm.
I think you have to be creative about it, but I think it's too important to not. I see marriage as very fragile. I look at it a lot like water. Like, water is awesome. I love being in the ocean, but boy, like, it can break you, and you have to be very careful with it. And I think a lot of people think marriage, you can just coast. And I don't think so at all. I think marriage is super, super fragile, and you have to invest in it a lot.
Yeah.
And if you don't invest in it a lot, I think that's the other thing, too, that people run into. So many people just look at everybody else's marriage and they're like, that's so cool. I wish I had that. What are you doing to invest in your marriage? Like, the grass is always greener where it's watered and fed.
Yeah, that's good.
What are you doing? If you're stuck in that rut, and you're stuck in that rut and stuck in that rut, but you haven't done anything to get out of it, or you don't know, then instead of just looking at everybody else's marriage and thinking that must be really nice for them,
Sure.
what can you do to get out of that?
Yeah. Yeah, Song of Songs in the Old Testament, which feels like the most relationship-focused book of the Bible, uses gardening imagery all the time. And that really rings true, that you can have a really fruitful season in the garden, but if you go on autopilot for a year, you can't say, remember last year was a great garden.
Right.
It was.
Yeah.
And right now there's weeds to pull, and there's fertilizer to put on, and there's fruit to harvest. So I kind of see marriage that way, that, every year is a fresh season, that you really have to talk it through and do the hard work. Because if you go on autopilot, like this is the kid season or this is the work season, like, what do you think is going to happen to the marriage?
Yep.
So those constant conversations where you're coming back to the mutually agreed upon expectations seem huge to me.
What about when people are stuck in the rut? What have you noticed through your counseling and stuff? The marriages that get really, like, people have just kind of given up. Like, he's never going to change. And we always miscommunicate. And do you see anything that people can do? Because someone might be listening right now and go, okay, so you said we have to do something to get out of this rut.
Sure.
So what are first steps?
Oh.
Is that making you uncomfortable? Or?
No, I'm thinking about, sometimes I think my answers are right, but the way I say them is wrong. So I'm a little worried about that. Biblically, I think you have to start with your own repentance. I think the step we often skip is the deeply grievous sin that we commit against our spouse that we somehow justify or minimize. And I think if I took a vow to love Kim like Jesus loved me, sacrificial love, and then the time comes where Kim and I get stuck, and if I'm pointing fingers at the kids and the schedule, and I can't first look in the mirror and say, I am a huge part of the problem right now. If I really think in the back of my mind, I'm just a victim, or I only did B because you did A and you started it, like, I don't think you get unstuck from that. I think when two sinners sin against each other and they can't own their own sin, I think that pride will be a massive boulder that keeps them apart. And until we repent of that, I think you can schedule an extra date night or sit down and agree on a budget, but I don't think you heal the heart until I can say, I sinned against you. I grieve the Holy Spirit when I treated you that way. Instead of, well, if you wouldn't have, like, to me, that's the hardest thing in the world. If I'm a victim, that feels, you're the bad guy. You're the bad one in the relationship. But man, that's hard, especially if you've been through a year or 2 or 10 or 22 where you feel like, I could literally list 1,000 things he's done wrong to me or she's done wrong to me. Like, that's really hard to look yourself in the mirror and not be a Pharisee and say, I have to start. Jesus taught us to judge ourselves before we judge anyone else. And I think that whole speck and plank thing is so applicable to marriage. It has been for me, where I really think, like, okay, I wasn't perfect, but we wouldn't be having this argument if it wasn't for, and my heart kind of pours out what it really thinks. And of course, I often think I'm like Jesus in the story. and I've been crucified despite my righteousness and holiness, but that's not true. And once I get it out of my head, and if I say it in public, especially in front of friends, it becomes very clear that I'm not as innocent as I think. Am I being too hard on people, do you think?
I think that too often our end goal is a happy marriage instead of wanting to be like Christ and to glorify him. So at the end of our days, I don't know, I don't have a lot of weight in happiness. Like happiness comes and goes, but when you take a vow before God, it's a pretty serious thing.
Yeah.
And you promised, most of us use the words, for better or worse, rich or poor, like sickness and health. And the more I become like Christ and live the sanctified life, the less I'm annoyed with him. Just true story.
Sure.
So like you said, what did Christ do? He sacrificed. He humbled himself. Yeah. There was nothing that was too little. He washed his disciples' grimy feet.
Yeah.
So if you can ask yourself, am I being like Christ? And all of us will answer no almost every time.
Sure.
And then the other part is, are you glorifying God? Like when you go through the hard seasons and you're hanging on and you refuse to talk crap about your spouse in front of anyone, like you are just like, he's the best. And he hears that. I think the angels sing. Like, I just think I'm going to glorify God. I took a vow. We're hanging on. So what? We're going through a hard time. Everybody goes through a hard time. You go through a hard time at your jobs. Sure. You go through a hard time in school.
Yep.
It's not going to be bliss all the time. But are you becoming more like Christ? And are you glorifying God? And if you say yes to both those things, the rest will come.
Wow. Do you think in 90% of relationships, I was thinking this before, if I just tried for a year to put Kim first, to love her unconditionally, like I can think of some really narcissistic, abusive things, or maybe this won't work. But I was trying to imagine, could a spouse be loved for a straight year? Like, this is just about you, without ending up with a great marriage 12 months later. I don't overpromise. That's not like a Bible idea. But I was just trying to think, like, if I didn't defend or justify, if I'm like, how can I serve you? How can I help you? I'm going to prioritize you. I'm trying to imagine a relationship where that happened for not like, I'll do it for a week, and then if you don't do something for me. But if I just put you first for a year, do you think 9 out of 10 marriages who are stuck would get saved and end up in a healthy spot?
It's not even a year. Actually, there is a very well-known, it's 30-day challenge. So there's a well-known female ministry. She's a radio personality, and she does a 30-day challenge, usually in October, where she tells women for 30 days, you do not complain to your husband. You do not pick apart anything he does. The only words that come out of your mouth are positive encouragements. Numerous marriages have been saved.
Wow.
30 days, because what happens is you break that cycle, you stop, and all you do is you only change what comes out of your mouth. Sure. Nothing else changes. You haven't lost weight. You're not sexier. You're not nothing else has changed.
Just the words.
Just the words, the way you treat them.
Wow.
And so many people have come back and said, that saved my marriage.
Wow.
Like, my husband's a totally different person.
Yes.
Tone of your voice changes. You find the good in them. I think most people want to be the best spouse. Christian people want to be the best spouse that they can be.
Yeah.
I really do think they want a good marriage. They just aren't entirely sure how to do it, and they don't realize how the little nitpicky things we choose to see every day.
Yep.
Oh my goodness, his socks are there again. Why'd you leave your socks? Just pick them up, put them away, and thank him for being a great spouse. And see what that does to him, because the next time he's like, I'm not going to put my socks here. Like, why would I do that?
Wow. That's really good. Do you have any tips? I mean, I think of the arguments that I've been in with Kim in the past 5 years. They're so illogical. It's zoom, like I just get stuck on one thing, and it's totally like self-sabotage.
Yeah.
But making that little thing a big thing instead of just like, I think what you're saying is spot on. I find it emotionally difficult in that moment where I just feel like this is wrong, and I need to if I would give it like 24 hours, it would probably be just fine. But how do you get out of those moments when you just feel so emotionally riled up about whatever it is?
A good friend of mine told me years ago, Amber, you can be right or you can be kind, but you can only be one. And almost every time that I choose kindness over being right, it ends up so much better.
Wow.
So if you just, in that moment, when you're winning the argument and you know you can, because I can verbally destroy Steve. I'm pretty
That's
good.
going to be the good quote on like the still image on Instagram. I can verbally destroy Steve.
I can.
We'll bit like a black and white with some lightning bolts coming down.
And true story, at the beginning of my marriage, I did. And I relished that
Yeah.
I had the arguments. I could say, I am better, A, B, C, D.
Mic drop.
Walk away. And what am I doing? I'm destroying my marriage.
Wow.
So you can be right.
Sure.
Or you can be kind and have a good marriage, but you can't be both.
Yeah. Take your trophy and sleep in the basement.
Right.
All right.
Exactly.
Kim had a defense mechanism against that because I have a lot of words too.
Mm-hmm.
She would just, I try to argue late into that and she'd just fall asleep. I would think like we'd be laying in bed and I'd think I'm making like 0.17 I thought was close to the deal. And she would do the twitch and I would pause like, wait.
She's asleep.
How long have you been sleeping for? I'm winning this argument. Right?
Of course you are. And you know what? You're the only one who needs to know that you're winning it.
Tell me where to go back to, where I lost you. Yeah. Oh my goodness, you're so right.
And if we remember, we're on the same team. That was a huge turn for me too.
Yeah.
There was a point in our marriage when it quit being you versus me. It was like, oh man, we are on the same team.
Yeah.
If we're on the same team, we win. You know, it's the whole horses. Like if one horse is pulling, it can pull 800 pounds or whatever, and the other, but together you can do like 4 times as much. Yeah. So if we're on the same team, we can accomplish so much more than if we're both, doing our own thing.
Wow, that's good. I was at a marriage conference maybe 7 years ago, and I remember the speakers were talking about pride, and I remember a guy kind of raised his hand in the congregation, and he said, "Do you know what pride stands for?" I never heard this before. He said it's an acronym. It stands for, please remember, I destroy everything.
Yeah.
And I thought that's so true. It's I'm trying to think of an argument with Kim where I've been really humble and it's gone badly.
Right.
I can think of times I've been very proud where, it didn't fix it. Apparently she just didn't need me to tell her what she was doing wrong and why I'm working harder in this marriage. We're in a good spot, by the way, but I think we're in the worst of over 20-some years.
For sure.
Yeah, so we're saying, just do a quick review of what we've covered. Expectations. So getting on the same page, verbalizing what you expect, having mutually agreed upon expectations. Communication. Sometimes there's a difference between emotion that you think communicates action and maybe a guy who just needs action to be communicated directly or needs to explore emotion. We talked about priorities, that there's seasons when things get busy, but you just got to talk those through so you don't have different priorities and feel neglected. And we talked about the role of pride and humility, unconditional love. Man, those are, I think, some of the biggest things to increase the grade in a marriage. Are there things we're missing?
Just to recap what you said, the humility. I mean, when the marriage is stuck in something, the humility of starting with you versus starting with them.
Yes.
I've brought it up before when we've talked, but the whole Gary Chapman, like when he does his marriage counseling and he has people talk about what the spouse is doing wrong in the marriage, and they cannot come up with like pages. And then they say, now turn over the page and what are you doing? And they're like 1, 2 things. And it's like, okay, start with you. Yeah. Just start with those 3 things. If that's all you think you're doing wrong,
I don't
start
agree
there.
with your list, but let's start there anyway. Yeah. All right. Since this is a podcast about taboo questions, I've sometimes seen the tension with physical intimacy as, is it the thing you do that helps restore the marriage, or is it the thing you wait for until the marriage is restored?
Yes.
Sometimes
Both.
when there's a difference with desire, for one person, that might be the source of their pain. Like, I'm never going to be happy unless this changes. And for another person, is like, well, I'm never going to be into that until you change A, B, and C. So when a couple has, let's say, different desires for physical intimacy, how do you get unstuck when, for one person, it's the first domino, and the other person, it's the 10th?
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is the one place in the Bible that we are supposed to mutually submit. So it's not the wife submitting to him or him submitting to the wife. That's the mutual submission. Yeah. It doesn't matter which it is. I keep going back to what you said when we did the blueprints for a happy home. Someone has to give. So whoever's listening to it, that's you. Whether it's the man or the woman, someone has to give because you're going to be stuck. So someone has to give. Always.
Hmm.
I personally think that, and I've said this to many people, but I think that's the best and easiest way to get over a fight.
Makes it better?
Yeah. I mean,
dramatic pause. Yeah.
Okay. So I think I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think after a man has sex, he's very much more likely to talk and, I don't know what the word is, more tender. So I used to, while I was raising my kids, I had a really close friend. We talked every day. We were both stay-at-home moms. We had 4 small kids. We were doing the same thing. And she would often remind me, I'd be like, oh, Steve is driving me nuts, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, well, you know what you got to do. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. She's like, you know what you got to do. Like, you know what you got to do. And 9 out of 10 times, absolutely right.
Wow.
You know what you got to do. And when you do that, it's like, yeah, the rest falls into place. And I see what you're saying. There are deeper, darker relationships where that's not going to solve things.
Yeah, that's good to say.
And there are abusive relationships where that's not going to solve things.
Yep.
But if your marriage is pretty okay, a lot of times that does.
Yeah, I like that. I think as a Christian, if you're the higher desire, one of the best things you can do in that arena is to be patient. Because if you're kind of slowly rebuilding things and then when you desire it and he doesn't or she doesn't, if you're going to make that a fight, you're going to blow up your progress pretty quickly. So I think for you, for patience, and if you're the lower desire, 10% of that effort, even if it's once a month that you initiate intimacy, like we're not going to change in an instant our desires and it's not going to be perfect. But I think if we could each take that little step, whether you're the husband, wife, higher desire, lower desire, I think when you know that your husband might be interested, but he's being patient because he's trying to honor you.
Yeah.
Or maybe this wouldn't be the first thing on her list, but she's making an effort because she loves you. I think that communicates a lot when it comes to physical intimacy.
I think, too, to remember that that's God's gift to marriage. And I think that you should both do whatever you can to make it enjoyable. So the person with less of a desire, like, what is the drawback? I mean, what is it is it because you're tired? And so, okay, what would make it more enjoyable? Well, maybe if you went to bed earlier or, like just the whole, again, it's the communication.
Yeah, I was thinking
communication and priorities. Like if I'm going to make this a priority, if I exercise before I take a shower, before I go to bed and he's waiting and then he gets mad or whatever. Okay, well, maybe exercise in the morning.
Sure.
I mean, just to make it more enjoyable for both of you so it's on the calendar.
Yeah, to talk that through.
Yeah.
I think that's good. No one told me that before I got married.
No one will.
you can talk about sex. Yeah. And I think that's really healthy. There's so many expectations we bring in because of media, for some people because of pornography,
right?
Because of whatever. So to be able to talk about that and I think work through some of these little hiccups or barriers that get in the way is really powerful.
And again, coming back to the men do not you have to be very black and white, in terms of if he's waiting in bed and you didn't know that he was waiting in bed and you're on the elliptical and, and it's like,
the tension is growing.
Yeah, exactly. And then anger. And then, instead of
that's good.
Come and talk to me and tell me, what you're thinking.
Yeah, that's good. We've touched on it a bit, but maybe one last thing I wanted to bring up today is the power of communication within community. You just told the story about your friend who said 9 times out of 10, she was right when she communicates. We have a small group that I'm leading and it's 6 separate couples. And we talk really openly about marriage. And it's amazing to me how healing when you just say, wow, Kim and I had a really rough week. Here's what happened. And you see someone elbow their spouse and you're like, oh wait, most people have been through this.
For sure.
And then people are talking over snacks. And it's just, I think it sometimes takes the air out of the balloon of tension and frustration. Like, oh, this is totally normal for people who love God. And they've been there and they got through it and we're going to get through it. But I wonder if couples are embarrassed about their flaws in their fights, if they fake it and put on a filter, like they end up bearing more burden than they have to.
Yeah.
Have you seen just the power of honest conversation, community?
Yeah, I think what you said is so rich. We've been in a life group for 18 years
Mm-hmm.
and we've done life together, and you're absolutely, I mean, we laugh and cry together, right? And we can joke over the funny things, and we can, cry over but yeah, you're right. I think the truth is, and maybe the taboo subject is, we all struggle. We're not all A+ marriages all the time.
Sure.
It can change from week to week, and to be open, and also, I mean, to ask for prayers. With my friends, we often do.
Yeah.
I am struggling, or me talking to my friend and saying, we're not getting along, and her being encouraging, then like, Amber, try this or whatever. I think you have to. I think that's huge.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think, I've never thought this through, so you're the first person to hear this question that pops into my brain. That's dangerous. Do you think, I don't want to say you need, but is it best if it happens in a group of both husbands and wives? I can picture guys being guys.
Yeah.
And if I said something and maybe I'm leaning too much because Kim's not there, so I'm telling my kind of filtered side of the story, and now suddenly we're all victims, or women who, our husbands are all lazy and they never do anything. Like, I can see that happening. I think that does happen a lot. But when I'm at my life group and there's 6 women in the room, including my wife, I can't BS anyone.
It's a more balanced approach, isn't it?
It really is. And it keeps me in check. And I'm really grateful for that we have a mixed group. I know sometimes there's times to confide in the guys or for women to confide in a woman. But do you think that there's really like accountability and healing power in a mixed gender kind of situation?
I have told my kids that is the most important thing that Steve and I did for our marriage, is be in a Bible study group that meets once a month with other couples.
Yeah.
I did women's Bible studies. I go off and I'm with the girls. I hang out with my friends. He does his own thing. That's good.
Yeah.
There's places for that, but absolutely what you just said.
Yeah.
Being with couples, and we're the youngest couple in this group.
Okay.
We have gleaned all the wisdom from what these guys have gone through. They've all gone through kids leaving home, being married, blah, blah, blah. And man, I mean, like, we have gotten so much out of this.
Yeah. That's awesome. Kim and I are the oldest couple in our group. Yeah, the other day we noticed like the young newlyweds. I just did their wedding a couple months ago. They were talking to our 16-year-old daughter, Brooklyn, and Kim was saying, "Wow, isn't it amazing how they connect with Brooklyn?" I'm like, Kim,
they're closer in age.
They are so much closer in age. Like, that couple is closer to their birth than they are to.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that's last thing I want to say about that is we have a rule in our life group where we talk about ourselves first before other people. So I think in those situations, especially if things are tense, if I come out hot against Kim and all the wrongs that she's done, I think that goes wrong pretty quickly. But if I can say, hey, Kim and I had a rough week, and here's what I said that I regret, and just let Kim make her own confession, I feel like that's maybe a little bit of that humility we talked about. So yeah, if you're listening, don't think I'm just going to drop bombs on my spouse in public and think it's going to work better. You know, what you said about speaking kindly and humbly, I've just seen that fix things so fast. And people who are on a downward trend, they kind of bottom out at group, and then things start to get better.
And I would say, oh man, I don't know if there is a time. I think there's a time to talk about your spouse with a good friend who you can bleed with, like I am bleeding and this is a wound.
Yep.
But by and large, the negative stuff against your spouse in public or to other people, like that's a big no-no.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't belong on Facebook. It doesn't that is only going to make this situation so much worse.
Passive-aggressive comments on Facebook like marriage, ... Post it. You don't think that helps?
No.
So I
don't.
should not take that post.
All the Instagram reels, like he's such a doofus. It's like, that's not helping anyone. Like, let's think the best, say the best. I mean, whatever is true, whatever is right, whatever is noble, whatever is kind. Think about these things. Like, think about it, say it. And again, I'm just going to say, you build your spouse up in front of other people in public all the time. Yeah. You do that, you watch and see how they react. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I can't imagine a spouse being like, well, that's just awful. Yeah. They want to live up to the standard that you've put them at.
Stop respecting me. It makes me feel
exactly.
Yeah. Do you think it's true? I think what I hear you saying, I'm taking a Bible passage out of context, but I think a spouse reaps what they sow.
Mm-hmm.
And that just like a seed doesn't produce a harvest in a second, if you sow humility, forgiveness, kindness over time, that's going to produce that garden we talked about.
Yep.
That's really beautiful and fruitful.
So true.
Yeah. All right, last thing, Amber. We've talked a lot about maybe things that people should change,
Mm-hmm.
maybe communication, maybe patience with sex, might be community stuff. There's a lot of people listening now who might be overwhelmed with,
I know.
I'm so far from that. Maybe they're seeing for the first time, oh, crap.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more responsible for this than I thought I was.
Mm-hmm.
If you're sitting across the table from someone who is just feeling about this big because of their behavior in marriage, as you think about the gospel, what would you want to say to them?
Ooh, God's grace is always there to meet you. And I would say it's never too late to speak into your marriage, build into your marriage, invest in your marriage. And I'm a firm believer in you never give up on your spouse. You pray them through.
Yeah.
So whatever it is that is driving you absolutely crazy, you pray them through.
Yeah, that's good.
Keep going to God about it. Keep way more than you talk to them about it.
Yeah.
Pray them through. Never give up on your spouse.
Yeah. I think about the book of Ephesians. I was just in Ephesus a couple months ago, and what a relationally dysfunctional culture the Greeks had. Prostitution and affairs and sleeping with servants. But to know that even though Paul had to correct a lot of that when he writes to the Ephesians or the Corinthians, he spoke such gospel words to them. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. I would just want to say that to people. You might have a lot of things to change in your marriage, but the amazing thing about having a Christian marriage is that you have Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And if it was impatient words or impatience with sex or trashing your spouse online, there's a cross where your Savior bled to make sure God wouldn't hold that against you. And I think Amber and I, if you're listening, if you're watching, we would want you to go in peace and know that your sins are forgiven, that God is for you, that God wants to help you. He's not saying, get this right today, or here comes the hammer of judgment. He's a good father who wants to help heal maybe what sin is broken. So let's get Jesus right in the middle of it, not just with his power to change things, but with the way he already did change things through the cross.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I want to start there and see what God does with it. Wow.
Yep.
Man, a heavy conversation, but I think what we're trying to get to are the beautiful marriages. You and I have experienced chapters of that. I feel like I'm there right now, and it's so good. Marriage is fun. It's really fun when
It's supposed to be.
When it's going well. It's one of God's greatest gifts. So, a lot of heavy wisdom for us to process today, but I hope it's helpful to a lot of people who are listening.
Agree.
Awesome. Well, hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another Taboo conversation. As always, you can check out timeofgrace.org for the book Taboo, for some specific videos on sex, marriage, forgiveness, submission, all these kind of things that we talked about today. We hope you're blessed, and we'll talk to you next time.